Maria's morning began in a disappointing way. The woman woke up again from a nightmare that appeared in her life with agonizing regularity. In her dream, she was once again wandering the streets of an unfamiliar city, turning to look at the faces of passersby, but they all passed by without paying attention to her desperate cries. Cold sweat ran down her back as Maria glanced at the screen of her smartphone. It was only 04 Asr. It was early to get up for work, but she knew she wouldn't be able to sleep again after such a nightmare, so she hurried into the shower. The contrast between cold and almost hot water helped her to recover a little, and Maria went to the kitchen. There she found an unread book advertised by one of the popular book bloggers, but even reading couldn't distract her from the nightmare. "Molly, maybe I should get my thyroid checked," Maria said, referring to her cat, who, having heard her in the kitchen, had settled on a chair waiting for breakfast. The cat, of course, made no reply, only listened intently. "I read somewhere that nightmares and excessive sweating can be signs of hormone problems. And what about the age of 40? Maria pondered. "Time to visit an endocrinologist or even a psychologist. I'm already starting to socialize the cat like a person." She poured food for the pet and made coffee and sandwiches, not because of appetite, but just to somehow fill the time before going to work. The memories of the nightmare that reminded her of the worst event in her life never faded in her mind. More than 15 years have passed since the day she received the news that her 3-year-old daughter Eva had disappeared in a fire at the house of Julia, Maria's mother. According to the official version of the investigation, the cause was a short circuit in the wiring. The woman then just put her granddaughter to bed and went to the store. When she returned, she saw that the house was already engulfed in flames. Neighbors restrained the desperate Julia, trying to break through to the inside of the burning building. To her surprise, firefighters were quickly on the scene and quickly tackled the fire. Although the terrace, which served as a summer kitchen, was completely destroyed, the main part of the house remained relatively intact. But the most depressing part was that the 3-year-old girl was never found. She was not among those who gathered around the scene, ready to defend their property. On that hot summer day, as Maria defended her diploma, leaving aside the celebration of her success with her classmates, she hurried to her mother and daughter. She couldn't wait to share the joy of her successful completion of her studies at the Teacher Training Institute despite a year-long sabbatical. The woman remembered seeing her mother's damaged house, dropping the bag of groceries she had bought to celebrate the event, and rushing to the burned building. Julia was sitting on a bench under a small apple tree, and her daughter rushed to her. Mommy, what happened?" she asked. "A fire. The whole terrace burned down. Ellie is nowhere to be found." "How not, Mom? Where could she have gone?" anxiously asked her daughter. "Have you asked the neighbors?" "Of course. Kelly questioned everyone who was here. She didn't run off anywhere. I only went to the store for half an hour. When I came back, there were already people at the gate. The fire department was called. I tried to call you, but they said you were unavailable." Maria, who still held out a faint hope that one of the neighbors had taken Eva in, ran through the streets, knocking on every door. However, neither canvassing nor searching brought nothing. The girl disappeared, as if vanished into thin air. Deep in thought about the past, the woman completely forgot about breakfast. The coffee, released, formed a fragrant stream, rose from the coffee pot and spilled out, pouring a vast puddle onto the stove. A hissing sound caught Maria's attention, distracting her from her gloomy thoughts. She realized it was time to pull herself together. There was no changing the past, but she couldn't just forget what had happened. The tragedy had left her without a daughter and without a mother. Julia suffered greatly from not being able to protect her granddaughter. She had suffered one heart attack, but every time she saw a girl with long hair somewhere, her heart clenched so hard that she had to resort to heart pills. But even after months of struggling with anxiety and grief, Maria was still unable to recover from her longing and the unhappy sight of her daughter. 6 months later, Julia passed away, and Maria was left alone. In despair, she turned to Perry, Ava's father, who had disappeared immediately after learning of the girl's pregnancy. "Perry, I've never asked you for anything, but right now only you and your parents can help. They have connections. Ask them, I beg of you, for an investigator to look more thoroughly for our daughter. But he wouldn't listen to me. He said it's useless to hope for anything left of the girl. But I don't give up hope. Maria, my heartfelt condolences to you. I never thought our paths would cross under such circumstances. However, it seems to me that my help will be of little value. My parents are on vacation in Cyprus, and their influence on the investigation will be negligible. As soon as they return, I'll be sure to contact them. In the meantime, try to hold out, okay? The young woman, suffering from insomnia and grief, waited for months, but neither Perry nor his parents, to whom she had never had a warm relationship, made themselves known. She realized that she should not expect help from her former lover and his family. Maria literally visited the office of Investigator Scott and his supervisor, wrote statements, but there were no results. For several years she was afraid to leave her hometown, fearing that her daughter would suddenly be found. However, the unbearable pain prevented her from living fully and working. The problem was compounded by the fact that Maria could not overcome herself to get a job at the school. For 5 years she worked as a saleswoman, putting up posters about the missing Ava. But she got no results except malicious phone calls and taunts. Then Maria decided to end it all. She sold her apartment and all her possessions, moved to another city, and, promising the investigator to give her new contacts, started from scratch. The woman remembered how lucky she had been to find a modest place to live. Yes, it needed repairs, but Maria didn't care where she lived. She spent almost all her savings to buy the apartment and repairs. However, this strain almost completely filled her time. For the woman, the moment of a new beginning had arrived. And when the main works were finally completed, she, as if suddenly awakened, found that there was a park nearby where she could walk. There was a school in the yard of a neighboring house, and Maria suddenly felt a strong desire to work as an English teacher. The woman, of course, was a little afraid that she might be rejected because of her lack of teaching experience, but Principal Steve, after seeing her candidate's diploma, asked only 2 questions that he was most interested in. Are you married? And are you planning to go on maternity leave? Maria answered both questions in the negative and was welcomed with open arms. This new challenge helped Maria to distract herself a little. If it weren't for the nightmares and sudden bursts of bitter memories, she would have been sure that everything was going well in her life. She automatically wiped the stove and brewed another cup of coffee. After eating breakfast, she petted the cat and waited until it was time to go to work. Molly, stay home until tonight. She habitually said goodbye to the furry creature and headed off to work. The school was bustling with the usual activity generated by students of all ages. On the stairs, she was approached by Ella, the person in charge of educational work. Maria, a new instruction on the organization of New Year's celebrations from parents has arrived. Due to the current situation, it is preferable not to organize large events, but to try to have some local performances. Let's discuss it tonight. Okay? The workday went on as usual, and Maria even managed to distract herself from sad thoughts for a while. First, the 6th grade students delighted with unusually intelligent thoughts, and then the hooligan 8th grade surprised with another clever trick, fairly solved without loss of teacher authority. At recess, Maria looked through several essays and searched the internet for ideas for a future New Year's Eve performance. Classes were already over, but she stayed late to chat with Ella. The co-workers finally packed up and headed home. Maria took with her the essay she hadn't had time to check, turned out the light, and closed the office. The head teacher, who, fortunately, lived in the next doorway, was already waiting for her in the corridor. Together they headed for the exit of the already empty and unusually quiet school. In the spacious corridor, which sometimes served as a small gymnasium, a young cleaning lady was scrubbing the floors. Maria greeted her as usual, and as the girl was about to answer, something strange happened. Maria looked at the cleaning lady, leaned against the wall, and slowly settled to the floor. Ella was stunned by the surprise for a moment and then began to bring her colleague to her senses, patting her cheeks while simultaneously commanding the cleaning lady. Joan, quickly run to the guard, get the first aid kit from him and bring it here. Tell him we may need to call an ambulance, Ella said, and the girl rushed to run the errand. By the time she returned, Maria was beginning to regain consciousness. "Thank you. I feel better," she replied to Ella's sympathetic sighs. Then turned to the cleaning lady. "What's your name?" Maria asked. "Joan," replied the girl. Maria stood up, adjusting her skirt, and looked intently at Joan again. "Joan, it is very important for me to know where you got that pendant," she said. Ella, anticipating a difficult conversation, felt it necessary to intervene. "Maria, are you sure you're okay? Maybe we should call a doctor," Ella asked worriedly. Maria, however, only waved her hand. "No, it's more important for me to figure out how Joan got that pendant." Ella, knowing Maria quite well after years of working together, realized that this case really couldn't wait. She suggested, "You know what? I suggest you go to my place now and talk it over. Joan, please put aside your inventory and join us. I'm afraid the conversation may take a while." Soon the three women of different ages were gathered in the cozy kitchen. Ella's husband heated dinner for them and then left to watch television. Maria, however, had no time for food. Without looking away, she stared at Joan, then began to explain. "You see, I wove this pendant many years ago. I was a student then, and I wove it to calm myself down during the session. At first reluctantly and then more and more enthusiastically I practiced beading. I used imagination and images seen in nature or in magazines, and then even began to sell her products and earn not too much money. This pendant is special. I wove it during pregnancy for good luck. The pattern for the chain and the shape of the pendant I came up with myself. That's why it's important for me to know where you got it from." Joan, embarrassed, began to explain. "I found it in my mother's jewelry box when I was a little girl and I wear it often. I like it a lot. When I put it on, it doesn't seem too modern for a young girl, but it fits my personal style perfectly. If you'd like, I can call her right now and find out how it got to her." Joan pulled out her cell phone and put it on speaker. "Mom, hi. Can you tell me where you got the beaded pendant?" "Geez, Joan, what do you need that for?" Mom perplexedly interjected. "Mom, it's very important." "If it's important, I bought it. It's been a long time, I can't remember where," Mom replied easily. As the conversation progressed, Maria grew increasingly pale and anxious. When the conversation ended, she stated with certainty, "I couldn't sell that pendant, but I probably lost it somewhere. I'm sorry to have bothered you." Joan graciously bid the women farewell, but Maria's heart was pounding as if she had run a marathon. "Ella, I think this girl is my daughter who has been missing for 15 years, she said. The voice of the person she called sounded familiar. Thanks to the efforts of the vice principal and his connections, a week later Maria had the result of a DNA test in hand. There was no doubt. The girl was her long-missing daughter, Eva. Investigator Scott approached the distraught mother who had accidentally discovered her daughter. He enlisted the help of his colleagues and told Maria that according to the documents, Joan's mother is a woman who lives near the place where 15 years ago there was a disappearance. As a result of the investigation, the villain was arrested as she was preparing to leave the country. At Joan Eva's request, Maria denied the charges, and her daughter, while talking to her, recalled the few childhood memories that she considered to be her fantasies. Eva moved in with her real mom. Maria was now confident that everything in her life would be prosperous. She believed that Julia, too, looking down from heaven at their happy reunion, was happy for her daughter and granddaughter.